Hey everyone, how's it going? So I know I've been talked about running recently on the channel. I used to have my Diary of an Olympic Triathlete series, but then with my calf injury and my track season ending, I decided to end that. But I have still been running and training for the last few months. And now that we're at the end of 2024, I thought it could be interesting to bring back the running videos and do a little bit of a retrospective on this year. Because for me, 2024 has been the biggest year of my life in terms of athletic anything. This is the first year that really truly from January all the way to now December, I've been working out in a consistent way and enjoying that process of training and doing races and all that. So 2024, it's been an important year for me. I'm hoping that next year we can continue the momentum, hopefully with fewer injuries, which I'll get to talking about the injuries in this video later on. But with that, I thought it could be interesting to make a little bit of a look back on 2024, a little reflection video with the 2024 Woolley Athletic Awards, which basically, this year has had a lot of things. It's had a lot of cool moments, cool races, cool training sessions. And I want to kind of highlight a few of those sessions, both the good and the bad. Thought it'd be interesting to go through that stuff together. And I don't know if y'all end up liking the video. If I think it's cool, then maybe we'll make this an annual tradition. We'll see. But anyway, let's get to it. We're going to start with the Woolley Athletic Awards. So before I get into the major categories of the Woolley Athletic Awards, I wanted to start out with some honorable mentions, which were races or events that didn't win any of the categories outright, but I still thought were interesting or important events for me this year, and I wanted to mention them. And so there are three overall. The first two are the two triathlons that I did, which were way at the beginning of the year. So the JCC triathlon and the Carlisle triathlon. I started the first race I did the entire year was the JCC triathlon. In my city, we don't have YMCAs like a lot of cities do, or at least we don't have one close by. We have a Jewish community center. I ended up doing a triathlon there. They had an indoor triathlon. And that's what got me started in this whole thing to begin with. Was I was going for a jogger on there and I saw a poster for this indoor triathlon and I liked the idea, so I decided to try it out. And I ended up doing that race. And the biggest challenge for me was the swim. I didn't know if I could do the swim. The swim was only 500 yards, but I'd never swam more than a couple laps before. And I did struggle and I had to stop, but I was able to finish the race. I also did, I feel like pretty well on the bike and I got a pretty good time on the run. And then a month later, I ended up signing up for a triathlon that was a few towns over in a town called Carlisle, which is near Pittsburgh. And they also had an indoor triathlon there. And so I trained up for that. That was a longer triathlon, a longer swim, longer run, longer bike. And that was, a race where I had a real proper block of training. I did a good taper and I really executed on race day. So I was very happy with how that race turned out. And that just created momentum so that I could keep training. I mean, that was back in February. And by that race in February, I already knew that I was going to be racing until the end of this year and going for many years in the future because I'd found something that I truly enjoyed. So those were two races that were extremely important to me. The third race I want to mention is the Move for Mobility 5K, which was a 5K I did over the summer. I did a ton of races over the summer. I found it because I was looking to run a trail race because I gotten into training on some trails. So I found, all right, this is a trail 5K. Okay, let's see how this goes. Turns out, yeah, it was a trail 5K and also the hilliest race I've ever run in the worst way possible because it was this race that started flat for about half a mile and then it was all downhill. But then it was an out and back. So all that downhill you did, you then had to come back up in the second half of the race. On top of that, it was extremely hot. Fortunately, the race was in the morning, but it was extraordinarily hot. And on top of that, like it wasn't a race. I wasn't going for time, obviously. I was just kind of going to enjoy the experience, to see the course. But yeah, it was a really hard race. Like at the end of the hill, coming back up, I was really struggling. So did not get a good time. That's actually the worst time in a 5K race that I've ran all year. But it was a good time. I had fun with it. It was a race with no pressure, which was nice because there were a lot of high pressure races as well this year. So yeah, anyway, those are the honorable mentions. Sorry for the rambling. I'll try not to ramble as much, but as you guys can probably tell, there's a lot of story that comes with a lot of these races. Anyway, with that, let's get into the first category. The first category is the most satisfying race, and that is the most recent race that I've done, which is the Malaga Half Marathon. I think you guys could have seen this coming. The half marathon was the big race that I was building up to for months. And for me, it was satisfying for many reasons. First, the experience itself was just insane. There's actually going to be a video coming about this out there on the interwebs, which I will share with you guys, because I didn't run the race alone. I ran it with the fine people over at the Running Channel, which is a UK-based channel that makes all kinds of running content, running advice, and challenges, and they have a podcast. And anyway, they're really cool people. They've been motivating me for basically the entire year because I started listening to their podcast and watching their videos, and that's been something that's, accompanied me throughout my time running. And I decided on Malaga to run the half marathon because they had coupled with a tour agency to run the race with a bunch of their followers. And so I was in Spain. I knew I was going to be in Spain around when the Malaga half marathon was. And I was like, this is the perfect opportunity. But then on top of that, I ended up writing them an email, and through a random series of events, it turns out they were making a video while they were at the Malaga half marathon. And they asked me if I wanted to be in it. And at first I thought it was going to be like I would be one of the various subjects in the video. It turns out I was the subject. And not only was I the subject, they ended up having two of their main presenters, which were Sarah and Jess, run the race with me, pace me, and video it. And that video is going to be posted on December 30th, which I'm currently recording on December 28th. So that's in 2 days. The video might be out already by the time I edit this video together. So if it is, there will be a link down below. I'm also going to make a video talking a bit more in depth about that experience specifically because it was really cool. But on top of that, it was just the fact that it was the culmination of so much buildup. I haven't, made any videos about the half marathon buildup. I know I talked about maybe doing it, but part of the reason why I didn't was that I had a really rough time because the calf injury that ended my track season, I thought it was going to be treated very quickly, and it was not treated at all quickly. I ended up going to PT, but it didn't seem to really be working. Like the calf injury was healing, but very slowly, and it wasn't a very major calf injury, so I was confused. And then I got to Spain. It seemed to actually be getting worse. And then, I had like 6 weeks to heal up the calf injury before I needed to start half marathon training, but my time ran out. And so I got to the beginning of my 12-week training block. My calf was not healed. It was actually in a pretty weak state, but yet I had to start running. I could only run 3 times a week. I had to run, walk a ton of my runs. And a lot of my cardio, a lot of my volume had to come in the pool, and just with different forms of cross training. I couldn't strength train the way I wanted to. I wanted to start strength training twice a week, and I had to leave it. I had to stop doing it because I went to a physio in Spain, and they told me that the muscle was actually overloaded, and what I had to do was lower, my intensity and everything. And they said stop lifting because that's going to put extra strain on it. And so they did help me to manage it. The calf actually got better while I was training for the half marathon. But it was just a constant, dealing with setbacks, dealing with so much just like discomfort and like being like, why can't my calf just work normally? Why do I have to be dealing with this pain? So I was dealing with that for, 8 of the 12 weeks of the training block. And then I had a 10K race 4 weeks out from half marathon day. And that was meant to build, confidence, mental confidence, and be able to get ready for the race and prove that I could cover the distance. And the race went well, but then a few days later, a foot injury showed up. And that foot injury was basically with me until race day. And I couldn't run for many weeks before the race, including what were my key peak weeks, my key weeks of the highest mileage I was going to do. I couldn't run any of those. I was literally, all I could do was cross training. And finally, like the week before the race, I was able to run, but short runs, like just a very little amount of running. And so really it was, I got to the start line at Malaga. I had no idea if I was going to be able to finish. I was making jokes to Sarah and Jess, like, you guys might have to carry me across the finish line, but I actually meant it because every visualization that I was having of the race, they tell you to visualize as a runner. Every time I visualized the race, it was me pulling up at mile 7 or mile 10 with my foot just in enormous pain and not being able to finish running. And yet somehow on race day, there were no problems. My calf was completely fine. my foot after mile 1 was completely fine. I had a great time with the crowds, with the sites, with Sarah and Jess. Obviously, half marathoning is a very different kind of running, and it's quite comfortable. You're running most of the time at a comfortable rate. So it was really satisfying overcoming all that stuff. And now being able to say, like, I did a half marathon, I did it just training however I could, whenever I could. I wasn't able to do what is the perfect half marathon training. The longest run I did before the race was 7.5 miles. And that was a run walk even. So like, I didn't do at all what is, the ideal perfect training. And yet I was able to do it. Not only do it, but do it under 2 hours, which is my time goal. So I could not be happier with that race. Extremely satisfied with it. Honestly, before the half marathon, I was going to say my most satisfying race was the Carlisle Triathlon. And the reason I was going to say that was because the Carlisle Triathlon went perfectly to plan. Like, all of my training came together exactly how it needed to for me to do something I didn't think I could do. This race is satisfying for almost the complete opposite reason, which is that nothing went to plan, and yet it worked out because of great determination and just doing the training that I could. And so that's the story. Malaga was crazy, extremely satisfying. Crossing the finish line was crazy. And yeah, when the video comes out, I'll share it with you guys and do a little commentary here on the channel of the whole experience. The next category is the most surprising race of 2024. And this is actually 2 races combined into one event, one track meet, which was the Petite track meet, which was in June. And so this was kind of at the beginning, what I thought was the beginning turned out to be middle to end of my track season. And in this event, I did for the first time ever 2 races in one track meet. I was doing the mile and the 800. The mile I was running to just kind of see what time I could get. I was just gradually trying to bump time, bump seconds off of my mile time and get down to a 6-minute mile. I'd run the week before a 6:40. And so at this event, I was just trying to see, okay, what's the best I could run? In theory, I could maybe run a 6:30 if I timed, if I did the pacing correctly. And then the 800, I was just running for fun. Anyway, so I came to run the race. I really didn't have expectations. I was actually kind of like, why am I running this race? Because I'd already done a mile race the week before and the week before that. So I'd done 2 mile races. I'd also done a 5K recently. So I was like, I'm doing a lot of races. I really don't know why I'm doing this. Good thing I did do the race, though, because it's where I set my current mile PR. I ended up running the race, and I didn't feel very good running the mile. Like I remember coming around in the 3rd lap, not feeling great. The 4th lap, especially, being like, I don't even know how I could possibly maintain this for another lap. And then my dad was running with me, and kind of in the last 100, he tried to kind of pull past me. And so that, that led me to kick, and I was able to get, shave some seconds off my time. I ended up finishing in 6:23, which is stands as my current mile PR. And I remember like pausing my watch, looking down at it, and being like, is that right? Like, is the watch broken? Because I swear I thought I'd run a 6:40. Like, it felt like I was running the same time. I wasn't checking my splits. They were saying times, but as you guys know, when you run, you don't really perceive much outside of, what you're doing. So I wasn't really calculating well what the times were that they were giving me. And so I remember seeing like 6:23. I was like, there's no way this can be right. But then, I was right. So that was crazy, just getting my mile PR in such a big PR. And that also just completely changed the tone for the track season, because my first mile I'd run just under 7 minutes. I was trying to get down to 6, which at the beginning of the season seemed very difficult. Just by doing this race, I'd already dropped almost 40 seconds off of my time from the beginning of the season. Like, over just a couple of weeks, I dropped a lot of time off, which I've realized now it was just better pacing. And, figuring out, like, actually getting close to what my potential was. I was just running too slow at the beginning of the season. But also made me realize, like, a 6-minute mile is very much within reach. I just need to do a little bit of training, get my fitness right, and have a good race. And so it really changed the tone of the track season. Unfortunately, I didn't get to the 6-minute mile. That's going to be for next track season next summer. But, I got close, and it proved to me that, like, dang, I can actually run pretty fast. And the other race that happened was the 800, and that also my seed time for the race was a 3-minute 800. I ended up running in 2:48. And on top of that, the bigger surprise was, in general, my dad and brother are better runners than me. Over most distances, they beat me. And yet in this 800, I managed to beat both of them, including my little brother, who's a cross country runner who like is top 3 in our district every year in his cross country meets. Like, he's ridiculously fast. And yet I outkicked him on the final stretch of the 800, which was, quite a proud moment for me. And yeah, so that was also a big surprise, the fact that I was able to beat him in any race, given that, aerobically, he's quite a bit better than me. My dad's also quite a bit better than me. But the 800 seems like that right distance where it's like I have a better sprint ability, and it's, still an aerobic distance, but it's an aerobic distance where I can, hold on to them and be able to, make use of my kick at the end. So anyway, it was a fun race. I remember I finished that and I was pretty fired up. So yeah, fun event and definitely surprising outcomes. On the other side, the most disappointing race of 2024 is the America's Mile, which was run about a month after the Petite Track meet. And it was disappointing pretty much because of what happened at the Petite Track meet, because I set the standard for myself so high with, a 6:23 mile that I was like, okay, I started the season with a 6:55. I then ran a 6:40. I then ran a 6:23. So, and then I had a month of training where I was doing hard interval sessions, tempos, long runs, all that stuff. And so I was like, I have a real shot at a 6-minute mile. And there was the America's Mile, which is like the big mile race that we have in my city every year. It was formerly called the Liberty Mile, which we still, like, when I talk to my family, we still call it that. But they changed the name to the America's Mile, and they'd also changed the course. And this was important because they changed the course to add a large hill into it at the beginning. It was a combination of that, plus I mentally psyched myself out, and so many things happened. I ended up finishing in a time of 6:34, which, given the training level of fitness I was at, was nowhere close to what I could have run. It was just a bad race day. And unfortunately, after that, I picked up my injury and I couldn't keep running. So I wasn't able to get another crack at my mile PB. So my current mile PB is 6:23. And at that race, unfortunately, I wasn't able to run anything close to, to PB. I was 100% capable of it, but I was just nervous of the pain of the race. And so, yeah, definitely pretty disappointed with the outcome. I guess the only positive I could take from the race was that it did feel comfortable running a 6:34 mile, which it wouldn't have at the beginning of the season only a few weeks earlier. So it showed that my fitness had progressed a lot, but I just didn't take advantage of the progression of that fitness to get a better time, which I was capable of doing. The next category is the most painful race, and that was the Monaco 5K, which is where I set my current 5K PB of 24:38. And this race was awful. We did search it up so that I could set a PB. Like, we found a course that was nice and flat, a race, but a small race. So I'd have people to pace off of, but it also wouldn't be like massive crowds I had to weave around. And so, yeah, we found this race. We showed up. I remember the night before, I woke up and was having like I was going to say like trouble breathing, but it wasn't that. It just felt weird. I think it was just like a mix of some nerves and stuff like that. And then we get there and yeah, just things didn't feel great, kind of showing up to the race. And then we set off and I felt terrible from like half a mile in. Normally in a 5K, the first mile should be all right. And then you get to mile 2, you try to still stay relaxed as much as you can. But, you start working and then definitely, once you're past a mile and a half, once you get to the 2 mile mark, then it's just pain. And then you just got to hold on to that for mile 3. I was pretty much hurting from mile 1. And I was under pace on top of that. So like I was trying to get to the 24-minute 5K and I already knew from mile 1 that I was not going to get there. And I was also hurting. But, I kept pushing, but it was a really, really painful race. My dad, he was going ahead of me. He actually slowed down to help and try to kind of pace me along. Anyway, so a really painful race, but, we got there, we got the PB, so can't be too mad with it. Also, the other cool thing about this race was since it was so small, I ended up getting an age group prize. I came in 3rd place in my group of males 20 to 29, which is something that never happens because my age group is always the most competitive one. The 20 to 35 range is where all the fastest runners are. So like if I go to any large races, I'm never getting anywhere close to any kind of award. But I did this time, and my brother, he typically gets an award, so he did. My dad also typically gets an award because for their age groups, like they're faster than me, and of course for their age groups that are relatively slower, they're almost always getting medals. So all three of us got medals, and that was really cool. Category is the funnest race, and this for me was the Clipper Cross Country Series Race 1 in Ohio near where we live. It was a short drive away. They have a series of races that they do on cross country courses, and I found that, and I was like, let's try it out because my brother runs a lot of cross country, but I never run a cross country style race. So we ran it on a middle school cross country course that was 3K. And it was just a fun time. I really didn't go, worrying about any kind of time goal. I was just like, let's have a good time. I'm going to get out hard. The hard cross country start, you have the start where everyone's kind of spread out along a field, and then you just have to run to like there's a very narrow it was like a wooded area that you kind of had to go into. So it was a fun race. It definitely hurt quite a bit because I did not pace it well. I started off way too hot and I suffered for it. But I ended up kind of battling with another guy that was there. Like we were kind of passing each other back and forth. I ended up passing him at the end, so I won. And my 3K time wasn't amazing, but it was a fun race. I had a good time, and definitely looking to do a couple of races like that this year because cross country is fun. The cross country courses are fun, and doing that kind of competitive racing is fun. Not looking for a time, but just looking to compete with people, see what you can do. That's a different face of running, but it's a really fun one. Okay, next is our Tostitos bad weather race. Tostitos, it's just Tostitos, guys. Don't think about it. Anyway, this race was the March Mad Dash, which was a race that I did in March, as you can imagine. And yeah, I feel like this is a race that everyone has to have every year, right? Like it's just rainy and cold and miserable and terrible and awful. Yeah, that was it. Also, I showed up to this race. I was already trying to go after the 24-minute 5K, so I showed up to this race thinking that this was going to be it. It was raining. It was terrible. It was so bad. And then there's also a massive hill and like pretty much like towards the end of the third mile. So also, it completely killed any chances that there were of possibly getting a PB on that course. So yeah, not a fun time. It's just everything was cold. It's just that kind of race that you go out there like, running in rain has its appeal, but also it's definitely like, it's not always fun. And yeah, so not great. Okay, the next category is my favorite training session of the year, and this goes to a run I did with my dad where we ran to the Point, which is this little fountain state park that we have here in Pittsburgh. We ran almost 7 miles, 6.67 miles down there, and it was just like a nice easy run, getting to see the views of the city. And I just in general, I like easy long runs, especially in the conditions we ran in, which were, kind of like pretty cool. Like we had to wear, light jackets, and it was like the perfect running weather, and just the running, the conversation, the entire thing. And just also at this point, it was early in the year, and I was still kind of discovering that slow long runs could be fun. And so the entire experience was really cool, and it felt really almost like, I don't know. It just felt like really cool getting to the Point, having ran, almost 7 miles, and not even feeling that bad, like not even feeling that tired. I was just like, well, I just ran 6.5 miles. That was pretty cool. Yeah, so that was a really dope training session. On the other side, the worst training session of the year is the 8x400 workout that I did right before America's Mile, which I'm going to say this workout is to blame for the fact that I ran such a terrible time in that race, because we did this workout. First off, the idea of the workout was not good because we were doing it 4 days before the race. We ran it on a Monday and the race was on a Friday. That's to say you're not going to get any adaptations from the workout that are meaningful by the time the race comes around. It's kind of known that about a week out from the race, you stop getting really many adaptations at all. And it really 2 weeks out, like if you're looking for full adaptations, you stop having full adaptations once you're within 2 weeks of a race. So that's also where the idea of tapering comes in, for marathons and things like that. So this workout, first off, wasn't even going to give me benefits for the race. Like we were only 4 days out. And then also it was a predictor workout that was basically, let's see if we can hold 6-minute mile pace throughout 8 reps with a minute 30 rest. And that'll kind of, if you can do that, that shows that you can more or less run the pace that we need to run for the race. Okay, cool. So fine idea. And it would have been a good workout if we had more time before the race. And if we'd also done it after having trained enough. The problem is like 6-minute mile pace at this point was still quite a push, which like I knew it, but this workout just really, really proved it because we were not able to do it. Like we got a few reps in, just we were all absolutely dying. My little brother had to take a rep off. My dad and I kept running it, but we had to start increasing the rest length. We had to increase it to 2 minutes, which I think is we had done a workout just a week earlier that was this same thing, but with 2-minute rests. And that we'd done okay. But then we were cutting 30 seconds off the rest. And I don't know why we didn't think that was going to be a problem. But then also you add in, there was the heat and just all those things. Like it was a really hard workout. And the final rep, I remember I was going through it so hard. I remember we start the rep and literally I'm 50 meters in and already I'm starting to have to like chant mantras to myself. That's something I heard. It's like when you're really in pain, say mantras to yourself. I haven't been a person to do that like ever, but this workout, I was in so much pain that I was doing it. But then I get to 200 meters, literally, I cannot. Like my legs start slowing down. I just fall over on the track, onto my hands and knees on the infield, and was just sitting there and just like, yeah, just destroyed my confidence. Like I was just like, I cannot do this. And it also reminded me like just how painful it was. Because I'd gone through the pain in races, but this workout was a pain, I'd say quite a bit beyond what races had been. And so it just gave me the feeling like I cannot do it. And so when I got to the race and I was so scared of the pain that then it destroyed my ability. Like I didn't get out hard at all. And by the time I got to the quarter mile mark, I was already 15 seconds off pace and that was it. There's no way I was going to make that time up. And so I ran a terrible race. And a big part of that was the training session. It didn't go well. It wasn't well planned. We probably should have foreseen some of those problems and there's only so much you can do, but yeah, it was an unfortunate training session. So hoping to avoid these confidence destroying workouts going forward and maybe trying to plan things out a little bit better. Next up, we've got the best athletic moments of the year, and that goes to this video I'm about to show y'all right now.
Yeah, let's go, Woolies, let's go!
I already mentioned this, talking about the most surprising race of the year, but I was pretty fired up after this moment because I was not expecting it at all. Like I was running the 800, I'd gotten out hard, but I thought Henry was gone because every other race I've run with him, that's how it goes. Like the mile, he takes off. The 5K, all the 5Ks, he takes off. The 800, he took off, but I was able to reel him in and passing him at the end. Amazing feeling. To be fair, I have to put an asterisk. If this was a sanctioned track event monitored by some organization, this race would have been illegal because I stepped inside of the line, but there's nobody checking that stuff. So I passed him. I got the faster time. I won. So best athletic moment of the year. That was amazing. Anyway, that's all for this video. I don't really have much more to say. Those are the awards. I hope you guys have enjoyed this year's edition of the Woolley Athletic Awards. But yeah, this year's been really cool. I've done a lot of stuff, finally being able to have good organized training and feel motivated about it. But beyond that, I was able to do around 15 races, I think. I set a PB in the mile of 6:23. I set a PB in the 5K of 24:38. I was able to do my first half marathon, my first 10K, just a ton of cool events, fun events as well as competitive events, as well as time trials and time-based races. So it was a good mix, and I'm hoping that this year or next year, I guess, is going to be even more of that, more fun stuff, and, hopefully fewer injuries as well. We can only hope. Fingers crossed. But anyway, that's all. Hope you all have enjoyed, and I will see y'all very soon in another video on the channel. Peace.